To all Reddit travelers, what is your creepiest hotel story? My mom was traveling for work and sat next to a man, fellow business traveler, on the plane. They had a casual conversation and exchanged business cards. Later that evening she's in her hotel watching TV and gets a phone call from the front desk that her husband is here and they want to know if they can give him a key to the room. Turns out the creep on the plane was pretending to be her husband to try to get into her room. Geez, good thing they confirmed with her first. That's super creepy. I was traveling out of the country right after finishing up a huge 5-day work event where I had about 10 hours of sleep total during the 5 days. I got to the motel, which is kinda run down and the carpet and blankets are damp, but I'm so exhausted I don't even really think about it. I fall asleep pretty much immediately at like 8 PM local time. At maybe 11 PM or so, I get a call from the motel phone saying there's been a complaint about noise. I tell them that's impossible. I've been sleeping. They ask me if maybe it's someone else in the room and I tell them nope. I'm here alone so there's definitely no one else making noise. They ask me again if I'm sure I'm by myself and not causing any noise. I say yes again. Fall back asleep immediately. When I woke up and thought about it some more, I realized how weird the entire interaction was. There was absolutely no noise I could hear anywhere nearby and I don't know why the motel staff would need to clarify so many times that I was alone. Apparently they never called, so I assume it must have been someone calling the different rooms to see who was in the rooms and how many people. I've never been so glad to always use the extra latch chain lock. They ask me again if I'm sure I'm by myself. Well, it's just me and these 3 large bikers with baseball bats, but they don't make much noise. Never tell a stranger that you are alone. While in the Isles of Scotland, we stayed in a B&B. It was owned by a couple. The bedrooms were extremely well done and beautiful, but on everything there was signs to not touch. To use the shower, you would have to ask the couple and the internet ended at 11 PM. The woman would also check on everyone at random times in the night. We would hear creeping in the hallway to make sure everyone was sleeping and not doing any illegal things like using the internet. When we checked out of her B&B, she came into our room and said that we stunk, and opened the window to prove this and demanded for money immediately. Another traveler was kicked out of the B&B because the checkout time was 10 AM, and they were forced to stand outside. She wouldn't even let them stay inside in the thunderstorm while their taxi came. Another traveler had to go a check. We were in an isolated place to pay for the room and she took their bags and wouldn't give them back. But on the way out, she asked everyone if they enjoyed their stay. Edit. So I took a look at their TripAdvisor page and the ownership seems to have changed to a much nicer couple since we visited it in 2015. However, all of the negative reviews are from before the change. Location was Isle of Skye, Portree. This is the sort of thing you should share on one of those lodging review sites so others are aware. Peculiar behavior, to say the least. Found a hotel in Yangon, Burma, the day we got there for pretty cheap. They mentioned the rates were low because maintenance was being done on several floors. We sleep fine, wake up and head to breakfast. At breakfast we met some Germans who had also stayed the night in our hotel. They said they had not slept well because during the middle of the night someone woke them up to move them from the floor they were on. We, us and the Germans, found out later that they had been moved because they were on one of the levels reserved for maintenance, and part of the maintenance included gassing the rooms for bugs. During the middle of the night they were just going around the rooms shoving the gas nozzle or whatever under the doors and letting them run. Wound up killing the 2 people next to the Germans before they realized they'd accidentally booked people on that floor. We weren't on that floor thankfully, but it has always stuck with me how seemingly easy it could have been to have gotten mixed up in that. Good night, sleep tight, don't let the bedbug asphyxiation spray kill you at night. Family vacation, 1 AM. My brother and I had just finished watching The Shining on TV. Neither of us had seen it before. We heard someone trying to open our door. No one else was supposed to have keys. Someone tried to swing open the door, but the hotel lock stopped them. They kept trying to open it multiple times, banging the door against the lock. After a few tries, they gave up. The hotel desk clerk accidentally entered the wrong room for their keycards. It was probably best way I saw The Shining. I can't be scared more than that from that movie. That's happened to me once. The housekeeping ladies weren't given an updated room rental schedule and tried to get into my room at 6 AM one morning. I had used the chain bolt thing and everyone was very confused. Super terrifying way to wake up though. When I was 12, I was staying in a motel with my mom on a road trip. We were in the middle of nowhere in Texas at a motel that had a decent rating in our guidebook and was really cheap, so we went for it. In the middle of the night, the owner knocked on the door and told us we had to leave because he wanted the room for someone else. My mom was outside arguing with him while I was gathering our things, and I was terrified because I heard him start yelling. I looked out the window and saw about half a dozen bikers in vests appear out of nowhere, maybe a nearby room, and start confronting the owner. My mom came inside quickly and we watched them start harassing the guy. Things like she's paid to be here. You're gonna let her stay tonight. We don't want to ever hear crap like this from you again, and the owner was saying things like I don't want any trouble. Everybody left fairly quickly and we didn't ever hear anything about it the next day at checkout. We weren't able to sleep very well because we were so shook up, but it was better than getting in the car again. Thank you, anonymous biker gang. Unexpectedly wholesome. In 1996, while air drying naked after a shower lying on my hotel bed in Beijing with the curtains drawn, I received a call demanding I put on clothes. Hidden camera but demanding you not be naked. A friend and I once stayed at a pretty fancy B&B for the night. The lady who owned it was absolutely lovely, but would appear out of nowhere. We'd be sitting alone in a large room with one doorway and suddenly she was in the room with us. Either this joint had secret doors or something really creepy was going on. She seemed to know things that we'd said or done as well. The thing that tripped us out the most was hearing someone trying to open our door during the night. She was super lovely and the building was beautiful, but we were relieved to check out the next morning. She was a ghost. I arrive at a secluded, coastal hotel south of Marmaris, Turkey around 2 AM. It had been a long day in Istanbul followed by a flight and long bus ride into Marmaris where I haggled with non-English speaking taxi drivers, who were not even aware that this small resort exists. When the taxi pulls up to the hotel, it's on fire. When the owner, standing out front, sees us, he opens the taxi door excitedly. You come. I have nice room for you. I point out that the hotel is on fire but he simply gestures and says small fire. No problem. You come. I am utterly exhausted. I find myself following the owner into the hotel, stepping over fire hoses, waving away smoke, passing firefighters as they run up and down a very nice staircase. We pause at the second floor landing and the owner tells me, see, fire only on this side of hotel. This side no fire. You come. My exhaustion removes every ounce of common sense and I follow him to a room down the hall. The room is indeed fire free. I quickly scan the in case of fire message on the back of the door, check the window escape, and promptly pass out with my gear and boots on. In the morning I awake, alive, wondering if I dreamt the entire thing. I go down the smoky stairs past the charred other side of the hotel. The owner is so happy to see me, still alive, that he eats breakfast with me. I went back a few years later and the hotel had fully recovered. We're still running half a hotel. I toured around in bands a lot in my 20s, and not once but twice came back to my hotel room to find a turd in my shower. I was the only person with a key to the room. One was in Germany and one was in Belgium. 2 years apart, completely separate tour and crew. Phantom shitter strikes again. Did the couchsurfing.com thing with a friend a few years ago. We are both big guys so typically feel safe everywhere we go. Show up at the house. 60-year-old guy opens the door while on the phone. He's only wearing sweatpants. He signals for us to enter. He continues his conversation and ends with an I love you. He turns to us and says welcome, and apologizes for being on the phone. He starts talking about his GF, who he was talking with, and how she lives overseas. He mentions he has several GFs and boasts about being a ladies' man. He then starts to show us pictures. These girls looked like they were 14. While sliding through the pic he accidentally showed us one of their passports. This weirded us out a lot. We were early 20s and didn't really know what to do, so we said we were tired and wanted to sleep. He walked us to the room while rubbing his belly, told us we make breakfast in the morning. We decided to sleep the night, but leave before he woke up. My friend slept on the bedroom door so he couldn't sneak in. We got up super early and bolted. We got super weird vibes from the guy and just felt gross weird about the whole thing. Jesus, you really should have reported. Think you should still report actually. Stayed in a B&B in Pennsylvania that seemed cute enough. They did have a wall of antique dolls in the main room but otherwise no signs of weirdness. That's until we were settled in the room. I noticed some scratches on the floor near a bookcase and after some inspection realized it was a secret door. When I asked the owner, who gave a creepy vibe, if it worked, he said yes and showed me that it opened to their office, which was a cluttered room with a computer and piles of crap. It had a lock on their side and when I asked if there was a lock on my side he smiled and said no. When I showed some concern that there was an unlockable entrance to my room that was camouflaged that they didn't tell me about, he just kept smiling. So that night no sex, fear of cameras, and I barricaded the freaking door and barely slept. Edit. It was many years ago, before FB, Twitter etc. So we're racking our brains to remember the name. It was near New Hope. PA is all we can remember at this point. Edit 2. New Hope is lovely except creepy place. That's some Bates Motel crap right there. When I was 12, my family took a vacation to Europe. At our hotel in Rome, there was this amazing indoor pool, and being a child of my age, I would have spent the entire vacation there if I could. During one such swimming excursion, some random gentleman, I think probably around 40 something, comes over to me and starts tickling my feet. My mother is with me, but is preoccupied with one of my other siblings. He speaks English as well and starts teasing me for being ticklish and telling me how I'm simply adorable. Through my giggles, I keep shyly asking him to stop. He doesn't, and just keeps teasing me and touching my feet and lower legs. This went on for maybe 2 minutes tops before my mom sees what's happening and goes into super protective mode and tells him to back the frick off. Yikes, that's creepy. I am not sure if this qualifies or not. Let me know. When I was like 14/15, I went with my family to Las Vegas and we stayed off the main strip in a 2-bedroom suite. It was a smaller casino hotel. My parents left to go out and enjoy the night while I stayed with my younger siblings. They slept in the bedrooms and I was in the living room watching TV. I think I dozed off at around midnight and when I woke up, I was in a stairwell outside of the hotel room. I had no shoes on. I had no cell phone, no room key. I went to the front office and told them I was locked out of my room and they believed me and gave me a key. I still don't know why I was out there. To this day, I have never sleepwalked. I don't know what happened. Maybe I did sleepwalk. Maybe something happened during those hours that I cannot remember. But it was creepy enough for me to share. Was in San Juan del Sur, Nicaragua last year. Massive spiders all over the room. Even woke up with a couple of little scorpions in my bed the first morning. Next night I'm sitting at the bar, drinking and chatting with a mate. Feel a tickle on the back of my neck and think it's a mosquito or something. Brush the back of my neck and another motherfucking scorpion, this time way bigger, plops on the ground at my feet. Stared at it for a moment in shock, squealed like a girl, squashed it and kept drinking. I hated those big spiders in Nicaragua. They're so fast. And if they come in contact with you, you'll get a painful rash. Worst ever. My spouse and I stayed at a massive hotel complex which consisted of one hotel who bought almost every other hotel around it. We bought the online special and were put in one of the ancient acquisitions. There was this odd 4x4 piece of plywood that was hanging down from the ceiling just enough so it felt like someone could watch you through the crack but you couldn't see in it. We hung up the do not disturb sign and went to tourist around. We came back and the TV was on at maximum volume. We left and returned again and the shower curtain had fallen down. Good thing it was only a one-night stay. That room just had the feeling of someone there. When I was about 4, my family was at the resort in St. Kitts. I was swimming with some of the friends I made there when one of them speaks of a woman at the pool, calling her retarded. I didn't know what that meant at the time. She had some mental disability. I don't know what it was. One point during the swim I found myself in front of her and out of sight of my parents. I don't remember anything leading up to this moment. but I remember her telling me close your eyes and you'll get a big surprise. I did, not knowing any better, and she started hitting the top of my head with her fist and holding me underwater. Luckily my mom spotted this happening and stopped it. The woman who tried to drown me had a helper who was supposed to keep an eye on her, but was found suntanning and not paying any attention at all. My mom lost it on her for not paying attention. This whole thing was more scary than creepy, but it stuck with me ever since, so I thought I'd share. Once witnessed a thief breaking into cars in the parking lot from my hotel room window. Called the front desk and they had security go outside with a big butt stick. We had the bird's eye view as this security officer is searching for the thief and the thief is evading him. Unfortunately, the thief got away in his vehicle. Dead by Daylight, Thief Edition. Okay, so I already posted this on another thread, but when I was about 4 years old my family ended up staying at the Cedar Lodge motel where Cary Stayner worked right before he murdered 4 women. My family drove to Yosemite, and it was a long drive for us. 3 kids all under the age of 7 plus 2 adults and a fuck ton of mountains will do that. By the time we arrived at the motel, it was late. We were all cranky, and we couldn't wait to get out. But the moment we pulled in, something set my mom's teeth on edge and she insisted that we left and found another hotel. Reservation or not, my mom has always had this like sixth sense and her gut has actually saved us a couple of times, but my dad was tired and convinced her to ignore her gut and stay for just the night and the next morning we'd leave. I can remember my mom actually refusing to let go of our hands, making us stay right by her side as she kept looking around while checking in. To try and get her to relax, my dad suggested we go to the pool, thinking it would calm her down. Well, when we got there were no towels, so my mom called the front desk. The moment the man delivering towels arrived, my mom immediately grabbed us out of the water and rushed us back to the room. The man gave her the absolute creeps and she says there was just this feeling of pure evil when he looked at us. That night my mom and dad pushed the dresser in front of the door and had us all sleep in the same bed. The next morning, we left to go to another hotel, but my mom couldn't stop talking about how evil that motel was. About 2 months later, she and my dad were up late watching the news when they started reporting on a man who had murdered a woman and 2 young girls in Yosemite. Just as my mom began to say I bet it was at that motel, they showed Cary Stayner's face and said it occurred at the Cedar Lodge motel. Cary Stayner was the man who brought us our towels at the pool. We've never gone back to Yosemite and my mom is always insistent that we listen to our gut feeling and when every bone in your body is telling you something is wrong. GTFO. TL. DR. We stayed at a motel where serial killer Cary Stayner worked and my mom's gut told her he was a freaking creep. We have a winner. Not particularly creepy, but pretty freaking bleak. Been in Australia about a week. Decided to go straight to a farm to tick off the farm work for the 2nd year visa. Arrived at this rundown house, with the internal walls covered in graffiti, reminiscent of a crack den, in the of nowhere. All the other lodges look like broken men. Told that the weekly shopping run isn't for 2 more days, so here's a loaf of bread each. Start work the next day, picking runner beans paid at a $1.10 a kilo, busting my butt to make something like $50 in 14 hours. Slept in crammed in beds in what we assumed used to be a living room, with plain bread for dinner. Did a few hours the next day until my mate stood up like frick this crap, I'm not having this, and straight back to Melbourne we went. Ended up in an amazing hostel with great people, earning $25 an hour, with memories I'll never forget. Horror show averted. A chalet in the state of Maine, Vermont with 3 others. The lady at the front desk was approximately a billion years old with cloudy eyes and her front desk was a small table next to a recliner in a room full of knickknacks and china dolls. The actual room was what I imagine a hotel room in the 40s would look like, and obviously it had never been remodeled. The bathroom had a metal clawfoot tub. The worst part, though, was the door at the back of the room. I assumed it would be another closet, but we opened it and there was nothing but cold and darkness. We used the flashlight on our phones and discovered a long, wide, cement-walled hallway. I assumed it was used to travel between rooms when the weather was bad, but the vibe it gave off was making the hair on the back of my neck stand up. The night went smoothly and nothing ever happened, but I still feel like we survived a night in a boring horror movie. I've tried to look for it again but with no results. I'll have to ask my grandma who booked the trip. I would have blocked the door with a dresser or something. Don't need no murderers interrupting my sleep. My wife and I stayed in a pretty well-known hotel in London. The rooms were pretty nice but had a door which allowed someone to travel between our room and the one next to us. To do so you needed to open the door in my room and then someone had to open there in the neighboring room. There was only one handle on each door. One night I woke up in the middle of the night and thought I saw someone moving around. It being the dark in the middle of the night I thought it was my wife. The next morning I found my separator door ajar. I was visiting Nick with my wife and 1-year-old. My brother had made the hotel reservation for us, and we thought it would be nice. We arrived and checked in, and then found our way to our room. The hallways were a maze and it took us a few minutes to find our room. The room was pretty sketchy, but it was late and we were tired, so we started to settle in. My wife had brought a quart of milk for our kid, and since the room didn't have a fridge she asked me to take it to the front desk and ask them if they had a fridge we could use. I took the milk and headed into the maze hallway. I got a bit turned around, but eventually found the elevator. I got in, hit the L button and rode the elevator down. When the door opened at the lobby I was met with a dark narrow hallway. I stupidly stepped out, confused as to what was going on. There were several doors on both sides of the hallway, but all were locked. I walked down the hallway and eventually started to hear music playing. After a couple minutes I turned a corner and almost ran into two big guys. I stopped and stared at them, wondering what the heck was going on. One of the two, after looking me up and down and pausing on the milk I was carrying, asked me, "What are you doing here?" I just stared for a few seconds and said, "I'm just trying to find the lobby." He then escorted me to the entrance of what turned out to be a strip club. After exiting, I saw the hotel about half a block up the street. Apparently I took the elevator that the strippers would take with paying clients and had no idea. Thought I was in the Twilight Zone for a few minutes. I once stayed in a B&B which had a shared bathroom. The first night I got up at probably like 2 AM and I was bursting for a pee. The bathroom was down the hallway, not too far but seemed like such an effort in my tired state. I get to the bathroom and open the door and there was this guy just standing in the bathroom, dressed head to toe in a mime costume, face painted and everything. He was squatted down on the floor but his trousers were still up. I looked at him for a second. He gave me a wait with a smile and began just silently pushing. I just ran back to my room, locked the door and decided to pee in a bottle. I'm still not sure if I was just really tired and seeing things or something. It's seriously the strangest thing I've ever seen. Undoubtedly this event was broadcast on Japanese television with the reaction shots of a few minor celebrities superimposed on the edges of your confusion. I went on a road trip through USA a few years back. The night before I was due to return the rental van and fly home, I checked into a motel and transferred all my belongings into the room so I could pack my bags properly. I dumped it all on the desk on the other side of my room and promptly fell asleep. When I woke up the next morning, the tea kettle from the RV, which I swear I hadn't moved into the hotel room, was sitting on the pillow next to me. Nothing else had moved. Such a small thing. But it creeped me the frick out and I still can't figure out exactly how it happened. My girlfriend works as a TV commercials producer and often travels to South America, mainly Argentina. One night she woke up at around 3 AM to find a male hotel employee standing at the foot of her bed staring at her. When they checked the CCTV he had been doing it for hours that night and for the previous 3 nights. Checked into a hotel on vacation. Everything was going okay. Woke up one night to erratic movement of the door handle as if someone was trying to get in or break the door down. Always happened in the dead of the night when in deep sleep. As soon as I woke up it would stop. Spoke to a hotel manager about it and he told me it was a patient who was recently released from a mental institute who does this as he still thinks he is locked up in the institute. A combination of not taking his medication and sleepwalking makes his randomly try and kick doors down within the hotel. The family was very wealthy and connected and the manager didn't want to kick up a fuss for chucking out someone who can shut his business down very quickly. I left after a week because it got worse. Was staying in a youth hostel in Tel Aviv as a teenager, and I remember being woken up in the middle of the night and someone saying it's okay, don't worry, go back to sleep. I think I wasn't really fully awake, more of a half awake state. Anyway, when I got up in the morning, found out my wallet had been stolen. More crappy than creepy, I guess. Honestly, when someone unexpectedly says it's okay go back to sleep, I expect worse than a stolen wallet. I stayed in an Econo Lodge in Baltimore once, and the pic from the booking was not the hotel I was in. It was next to an abandoned red roof inn, which was constantly flooded with and a homeless shelter that seemed to have no volunteers and a ton of homeless people. My room smelled like mildew, had cigarette burns and blood stains on the blanket, and had some friendly rats scampering around. When I went to the front desk, the gentleman handed me a baggie of rat poison and said, "Sprinkle this, they will die." The following morning, as I stepped outside to the saving grace that was Dunkin' Donuts at the corner, there was a woman peeing in the parking lot, having a conversation with her friends while they were hitting the pipe. Place was the worst. Thought I could be stabbed at any moment. Stayed in New York City recently. A couple of things happened in that room. During the night, our spare room key went missing. It was on the desk and we turned that room upside down looking everywhere for it, but never found it. The safe randomly stopped letting us into it. All our cash was there and we were sure of the number. More KF and annoyance than creepy, but still. The last one was we got back to the room one night and our card wouldn't work in the door. We went to reception and sorted everything out, but when we got up the room was locked from the inside from one of those latches that swing to the side. We had a good fiddle with it once the handyman came up to try and get us in, and you cannot fathom how it locked itself. It wasn't a heavy latch but didn't swing on its own. That actually is really easy to do. The latch. It happens all the time. If the latch is away from the wall even a little and you walk out and the door slams itself, it jars the latch and swings it into place. This happened to my father, not me, but definitely too creepy not to share. My father went with a group to go on a trip to Tanzania to do some medical work in a poorer village. For a few nights of the trip, the group stayed in a hotel. My dad was sharing a room with another man from the group. Separate beds. One night, he is woken up by his roommate who has the light on. He looks terrified, trembling and praying. My dad asks what's wrong, but he won't say anything about it. My dad is obviously concerned, but since he can't do anything about it, he goes back to sleep. The next night, in the middle of the night, my father gets up to pee. He walks to the bathroom and starts to relieve himself when he catches a very strong scent of body odor. He and most of the people from the group are daily deodorant wearers, being from the US. Many locals in Tanzania don't wear it as frequently, so when the smell hits his nose he realizes he and his roommate might not be alone. He turns around and sees, standing there in the doorway, a local woman, shaking violently, her eyes rolled up locked on the ceiling. He panics, as no one should have been able to get into the room. He turns back around towards the bathroom in a moment of confusion, but when he turns back she's just gone, as if she had never been there. Shaken, he goes back to bed thinking maybe he was dreaming or seeing things. He lays back down on his side and, adrenaline starting to wear off, he begins to doze off again. Suddenly the smell returns. He slowly rolls over and looks to his left. There, in the bed beside him, is the woman, laying flat on her back, eyes glued to the ceiling. Again, panicking, he breaks his line of sight to her and again she is gone. My dad wasn't able to get back to sleep. The woman never made another appearance. He asked his roommate about it the next morning and he had encountered the same thing the night before, which was why he was so shaken. It could be explained by the fact that they were both on anti-malarial drugs, which can have side effects that include strange dreams, but still, super creepy, and definitely weird that, even if it was caused by the medication, both my father and his roommate experienced the same thing. It could be explained by the fact that they were both on anti-malarial drugs. Can confirm, malaria is almost better than the anti-malarian drugs. I was on a trip around Southeast Asia in 2012. Kay was staying at this hotel guest housing in Cambodia with my traveling companion. It was the middle of the night, and both of us woke up to the sound of our door handle jiggling. Then the door opened. My friend said, "What the frick," in a confused just woken up state, and this scared the person off. We need him her running away, and we asked each other if that really just happened. To make things even stranger, I got up and locked the door, and both of us just went back to sleep as if nothing happened. I wonder what would have happened if we hadn't heard the person come in. As I said, the door was locked, and we heard the person trying to pick the lock, or do whatever she did, and knowing people are home doesn't seem like a smart time to rob someone. A friend of mine just had someone come into his rural hotel room, steal his backpack, wallet, phone and Nintendo Switch from the bedside table. People can be ballsy as frick when they want your stuff. I had to stay in a hotel overnight to take a class in the morning and was super sleepy. The room smelled like smoke when I arrived, and I promptly called the front desk to tell them about it and that it wasn't me. Being as tired as I was, I climbed into the stained duvet and felt something cylindrical and small at my feet. I thought it was a pen, and since I was practically asleep, I was like, cool, I need a pen in the morning anyway. So, I woke up, got ready, and remembered the pen. I pulled the sheets back and it was a crack pipe. I was refunded everything for the room. The housekeeper was probably fired. I was staying in Birmingham. I let her hired. Nothing crazy. Nothing obviously creepy. One night around 2 AM I woke up to a man screaming. Like, stabbed in the heart scream. I sat there in a panic, wondering if I should call someone. But when I didn't hear anything else I chalked it up to a dream. The next night I woke up around 3 AM. And had this horrible feeling that someone was in my room. I rolled over and there was an old man, sitting on the AC. It was boxed in, smoking, looking away from me. I stared at him for a few seconds and he turned to look at me. So I shot up out of bed, ready to run. And no one was there. I don't lucid dream. While I have vivid dreams, they are not that vivid. I can describe that man to a T, and yet he was never there. We were in Spain and left the town because dad had to do some work at the library in a neighboring town. We came back late, and the hotel had moved all our stuff, down to the toothbrushes, from one room to a more expensive room, claiming that someone else had a reservation. We claimed bulls and started packing. When they realized we were serious, they let us stay in the more expensive room at the lower rate. We've had weirdo neighbors all over the place. Some Muslim guy was always arguing with his wife in the middle of the night after prayer time. This guy would go out in the hallway and work with his hammer on a bench bang bang in the middle of the night. Dad once went out in his underwear and asked him, "Need a hand?" The guy was like, "Oh, I didn't know you were asleep." Well, I couldn't sleep because some fuckwit is doing carpentry in the middle of the night. It wasn't ghost creepy, but just a little sour for you jittery folk out there. If you're going to Japan and booking with Airbnb, make sure it isn't one of those tiny post-war era homes. I booked one like that last year when I went to Kyoto. Quietest neighborhood I've ever been to, and it was a second home that the owner leased out, so I was the only tenant for my 3-night stay. Everything was plywood, and because it was in a quiet little neighborhood it felt like there wasn't anyone else for miles around. My room was lit by a single light bulb haphazardly hanging from a ceiling that flickered occasionally like in a cheap B-horror movie. Any movement caused creaks and bumps, and the cold air made those happen constantly around me as the plywood expanded and contracted through the day. I'm just lucky the Grudge didn't come out of the fricking TV during my stay. Okay, I've got 3 creepy stories back from when I was backpacking through India with my girlfriend. We are 2 girls from Europe. In Bangalore we booked a hotel after 18 hours spent in a night bus. We were very tired and wanted a bed and some food. The boys at the reception were kind of creepy and staring at us all the time, but we shrugged it off and went in our room at around 9 in the evening. At around 11 the lights went completely off. I tried to call the reception but the phone was out. Suddenly the door handle to our room started moving. I turned on the lantern on my phone and looked at the door. It was slowly opening. My girlfriend screamed and I jumped off the bed, pushing the door back into its place. The person outside was pushing as well, so we fought like this for a little while. Then, I locked the door again. 5 minutes pass and we hear the noise again. The person outside had a key and now they were opening the door. Slowly. It was so creepy. I kept banging on the door shouting, "Get the frick out, help." We called the police who eventually did nothing. We didn't sleep the whole night. We were in South, booking a hotel. My girlfriend was using the bathroom when she suddenly started screaming. I went in just in time to see a hole in the ceiling and an eye. The person ran immediately and we could hear the footsteps on the roof. After our 6 months travels, we were really tired of booking cheap and scary places for sleep. I had a accident and was barely moving, so I asked my girlfriend to book the nicest hotel, asked specifically for white sheets. It was my time to shine, so the hotel looked nice. White sheets indeed. The guy at the reception was sleeping in a sleeping bag in the reception. but whatever. We went to sleep in our white sheets just to wake up hours later covered in ticks and bug beds full of our blood. 5/7. As an Indian, I highly don't recommend trying to backpack through the country. Every time someone brings it up, I say it isn't safe and there isn't the infrastructure for it. Every person is like, oh, you don't know me, I can handle anything. This is what you can expect tbh. There are nice people in India, but if you don't know them, I wouldn't recommend going. My mom went to this hotel where the TV would turn on by itself a few times a day as well as doors closing in her room. It was a big room that had stairs in it, somewhere in Montauk, NY. Early 2000s I had just turned 18 and did some work abroad. I was in Czech Republic and did some shifts in this tiny remote mountaintop hotel. They also let me stay there as long as I worked. At night I could hear wolves howling. There was this matadee, older gentleman, tanned, pencil mustache and super formal behavior. We never exchanged words before this. One night after my shift I was sitting at the restaurant alone when he approached me and asked if I wanted to go for a walk. At night, in the woods. Why? Outside the patio there wasn't any source of light before the town below the mountain, not even on the road leading down. It was absolute darkness and this guy wanted to take me to the woods for some reason. No thanks. I politely declined, but he was persistent. I asked why should we go to the woods and he said why not? It's fun. No, it's freaking not. It's dangerous. He claimed he knew the area well and started to get weirdly desperate about it. After multiple no's he left. I felt so weirded out about it I just went in my room and called it the night. Also a odd side note that I never saw him again. So, not a super creepy story but creepiest I have encountered so far. Also I want to add that most likely the guy was just lonely and not a murderer. It was a very remote location with very few customers or new faces. On that trip I got a chance to visit Sterapramans Brewery and it was the best thing ever. While attending college I went on a road trip with a good friend of mine to watch sports team and big game being played in Florida. We were hurtling down the Florida Turnpike at 80 miles per hour around 2 in the morning. I had a CB radio in my truck at the time, tuned into channel 19, when out of the darkness a voice from the radio said, in the creepiest way possible, I didn't know you Tennessee boys could read a map. We responded with some nervous laughter. Turns out it was a trucker that saw us pass him as my buddy was looking at our map, trying to find some place for us to pull over and rest for a bit, and notice our TN license plate. He was super helpful and told us that there wasn't much around where we were but there was a motel we could try up the road. We thanked him and headed that way. Getting off the exit and following his directions brought us to a motel that, I kid you not, looked exactly like the one from the movie Psycho. We went into the office but there were no lights on and it appeared to be empty. A quick walk down to the handful of rooms yielded no more lights, people, other cars, or any signs of life in general. We went back into the office just to see if we had missed a sign or something, and I said, very loudly, hello. At that moment a young guy that had been asleep on a cot behind the front desk got up and asked us what we needed. We said we wanted a room. He responded, pick whichever one you want. They're all unlocked. We ended up picking one. All had 2 queen beds. They appeared reasonably clean, as far as motels go, but it was creepily outdated. The bathrooms were completely covered in old tile that was brownish green, and for some reason reminded me of an old high school gym locker room. We took turns showering and tried to get a bit of rest, which ended up in us laying down on top of the comforters on the bed since that seemed like the most hygienic thing we could do. We napped off and on for around an hour. Realizing that we weren't going to get any rest, we went back to talk to the guy in the office. After waking him up and telling him that after our showers we would rather just head back out, we asked him how much we owed him. Dunno, he responded. How about $10? We paid the man and left. Weirdest, and possibly cheapest, lodging I think I've experienced. I used to travel for work and my typical schedule meant that I would usually check in at about 11 PM. I've walked into rooms and without even turning on the light, just fell right into bed to find somebody already sleeping. This has happened 3 times. This was at a hotel in one of the nice, not so nice places in Singapore. Can't remember when but I went back to the hotel. At the elevator there was some other dude waiting there but he didn't push the button so I had to. At that time I thought he was a lazy frick. Entered lift. He didn't push a floor either. Years of playing SS13 has given me a healthy case of paranoia towards the actions of others, but I didn't jump to the conclusion yet. Might be he just was at the same floor as I. Stepped up. The halls split into two. Guy didn't go first, and only after I headed towards my room. He walked to follow. Warning bells in my head. This may be how I die. Continued on. He still followed me down the windy paths, and I just took a turn away from my room. He was still following, at which point I acted as if I headed the wrong direction by mistake and rushed to my room. Dude actually yelled behind me as if I did something wrong. Didn't get out until the next morning. Frick, that was worrisome. I guess I was the cause of a creepy hotel story. We had a class trip where the hotel we were staying at was actually a small collection of cabins in a woody, grassy area. Apparently, a great majority of my classmates had agreed to go on a run to a convenience store one evening, but there were maybe 6-7 of us who were unaware of the plans. So suddenly, from our perspective, everyone was suddenly gone and we were all alone. We were going around looking for people, and we had split up. I went up to my cabin, which had a balcony on it, and decided to try and survey the area to see if I could spot a teacher or one of the staff there. I saw my friends on the ground and waved at them just to say hi, let them know where I was. What I didn't realize was that I had just washed my hair, so it was long, dark, hanging down and kind of stringy looking, and was wearing a white nightgown. And from the perspective of my friends on the ground, I was backlit by the light coming from inside the room. So picture a Ring-esque girl waving down at a group of preteens in the woods who suddenly think that everyone vanished. You have been visited by the happy baby pygmy murder cow. Back away slowly and subscribe quickly to ensure your safety. Thanks for watching. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great